This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Hi, I'm Seth.
And I'm Patrick.
We're starting Fires of Heaven, the book without Perrin.
I'm sure that will make some of you sad.
And I'm sure it'll make some of you very, very happy.
With his coming are the dread fires born again. The hills burn, and the land turns sear. The tides of men run out, and the hours dwindle. The wall is pierced, and the veil of parting raised. Storms rumble beyond the horizon, and the fires of heaven purge the earth. There is no salvation without destruction, no hope this side of death. Fragment from the Prophecies of the Dragon, believed translated by Nidelia Basilane, first made and sword fast of Raiden of Whole Kukone, doing my best, circa 400 after breaking.
So this is definitely not happy prophecy, I wouldn't say. This is 400 years after the breaking. This is in the middle of, like, the worst of the worst things going on again, going on. And it's prophecy about the breaking of the world, right?
Yeah, I suppose the next time that it'll happen.
The dread fires, the hills burn, the land. What does it say in your book? Does it say the land turns what?
Sear, S-E-R-E? I actually don't know that word.
I don't either. I was hoping that was a mistake.
Googling. Dry or withered. Adjective.
So it's mostly describing the extended summer that the world is facing. The thing that they need the bold winds to fight is this lands turning sear. I think the wall is pierced, is the wall between the living and the dead.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. And the veil of parting raised, so basically we're seeing the dead walk.
Oh gosh, Aradia says dragon wall.
That's a good point. So the wall is pierced is the Aiel coming over the dragon wall. And the veil of parting, well, we can talk about when the Aiel left.
Yeah, and the veil of parting also makes me think of the kind of hero mist, for lack of a better term. The world of dreams, and
what about the mist around Ruidian? The veil of parting might be the mist around Ruidian that he destroys.
Aradia says veil of memory. Obscura says veil often means death.
Assumption is that it was the wall of death, the veil of death, is what's been pierced. And we see the dead walking again. But, hey, it's prophecy. It could be any and all. It could be none. This is what prophecies do, right?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the first one. I think that's the strongest. What that you said, between life and death. But it could be any number of those things. And
then, of course, just the final line, which is one of the most famous. There's no salvation without destruction. No hope this side of death. I mean, that is... It's rough. That's sort of prophesizing the last battle. No hope this side of death, saying Rand must die. Although I do think the Fires of Heaven is the out-of-control summer that the Dark One is sending.
We're about to talk about the prologue, which is titled The First Sparks Fall. So, the fire is starting to fall out of heaven.
And this is where Matt gets the Hand of the Red Band started. He kills Couladin. We get to see the capture of Moghedien. There's so many cool events. The death of Asmodean. We finally get to start asking the question, who killed Asmodean?
Yeah. Of course, we already know. Rand gets trained by Asmodean.
In the beginning, Rand has basically no training from Forsaken, and by the end, he's all tapped into his, age. I think he still keeps leveling up as he gets LTT knowledge that he wasn't trained in. And so
that's true.
Keeps getting more powerful, but this is really where he's the base level of both. I'd say that's true for both the girls and Rand, where the girls get Moghedien training and Rand gets Asmodean training, and so it's like the passage of the Age of Legends knowledge on to the people.
Heartily long read in here. About 2 pages.
Wouldn't expect any less.
Interrupt at any time. Also, before I break into this, is it Elaida du Avenry a Royhan? A Royhan? It's a really difficult... A-V-R? Averny? Alright, anyway.
Okay, so the issue was I was hitting mute on this mic and I wasn't getting muted, and I was like, I must be recording with the wrong mic, and then once I figured that out, cascading problems. So that's all taken care of now.
This is the prologue of the Fires of Heaven. The first sparks fall. and our symbol is the snake in the wheel. Elaida Duevrini Arohan absently fingered the long, seven-striped stole about her shoulders, the stole of the Amyrlin seat, as she sat behind her wide writing table. Many would have accounted her beautiful at first glance, but a second look made it clear that the severity of her ageless, Aes Sedai face was not a momentary matter. Today, there was something more, a light of anger in her dark eyes, if anyone had noticed. She barely listened to the women arrayed on stools before her. Their dresses were every color, from white to the darkest red, in silk or wool as each woman's taste dictated. Yet, all but one wore their formal shawls, embroidered white flame of Tarvalin centered on their backs, colored fringe proclaiming their ajas. As though this were a meeting of the Hall of the Tower, they discussed reports and rumors of events in the world, trying to sift fact from fancy, trying to decide the Tower's course of action, but they seldom even glanced at the woman behind the table, the woman they had sworn to obey. Elaida could not keep her full attention on them. They did not know what was really important, or rather, they knew and feared to speak it. There is apparently something happening in Shinar. That was Danelle, slight, and often seemingly lost in a dream, the only brown sister present. Green and Yellow also had only one sister apiece, and none of the three Ajas was pleased about that. There were no blues. Now, Danelle's big blue eyes looked thoughtfully inward. An unnoticed ink smudge stained her cheek, and her dark gray wool dress was rumpled. There are rumors of skirmishes, not with Trollocs and not Aiel, though raids through the Niam passes appear to have been increased. Between Shinarans, unusual for the borderlands, they seldom fight each other. If they intend to have a civil war, they have chosen the proper time for it, Alviarin said coolly. Tall and slim and all in white silk, she was the one without a shawl. The stole of the keeper around her shoulders was white also, to show she had been raised from the white. Not red, Elaida's former Aja, as tradition held. Whites were always cool. The Trollocs might as well have vanished. The entire blight seems quiet enough for two farmers and a novice to guard. Teslin's bony fingers shuffled papers on her lap, though she did not look at them. One of 4 red sisters there, more than any other Aja, she ran Elaida a close second for severity, though no one had ever thought her beautiful. Better perhaps if it did be no so quiet, Teslin said, her Illianer accent strong. I did receive a message this morning that the Marshal General of Saldea does have an army on the move. No toward the Blight, but in the opposite direction, south and east. He would no ever have done that if the Blight did no seem to be asleep. Then word of Mazrim Taim is seeping out? Alviarin could have been discussing the weather, or a piece of carpet instead of the potential disaster. Much effort had gone into capturing Taim, and as much into hiding his escape. No good to the Tower if the world learns they could not hold on to a false dragon once he was taken. And it seems that Queen Tenobia, or Davram Bashir, or both, thinks we cannot be trusted to deal with him again. Dead quiet fell at the mention of Taim. The man could channel. He had been on his way to Tarvalin to be gentled, cut off from the One Power forever, when he was broken free. Yet, that was not what curbed tongues. Once the existence of a man able to channel the One Power had been the deepest anathema. Hunting such men down was the main reason for the existence of the Red, and every Aja helped as it could. But now, most of the women beyond the table shifted on their stools, refusing to meet each other's eyes, because speaking of Taim brought them too close to another subject they did not want to speak aloud. Even Elaida felt bile rise in her stomach. Thought that gives us an intro of what kind of happens over the next 3 or 4 pages. And there's a lot of points to hit, important events.
Couple of things from the beginning. First of all, she's still wearing a 7-striped stole. She hasn't banished the blue Aja yet.
Oh, right.
And one thing we notice is Fain comes in shortly after this point. And so I'm wondering if a big part of her paranoia and the banishing of the blue and basically her power hungriness, we know, probably has something to do with Fain's influence.
And Fain even has like an internal monologue about exploiting the cracks in the tower, essentially. The growing rift between the sisters.
Totally. And we see that, grow out of all proportion at some point. And did you notice the Brown that made a comment here?
Is Danelle?
Danelle?
Yes. I'm not sure yet, though. Is Danelle currently not Danelle?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
It's Masana.
It was Masana back when they hauled Suan out of her office and stilled her. She's taken Danelle's place for some time now. I think Danelle comes back from a journey, like during that winter of what we know as, the Forsaken's release. And I think when she gets back, that's when she realizes that's when she's Masana.
Nice. I'm glad you pointed that out, because I kind of skimmed over it because I wasn't sure if that was Masana or not yet.
Oh, totally. And she's pointing out something's happening in Shinar. I honestly think she's just playing Aes Sedai here. But if you'll notice, this council is Danelle, Forsaken, Alviarin, Black. I mean, this is heavily influenced. Some of the three most important people here are playing for the other side.
Yeah. We see a few other Aes Sedai. I'm thinking... Yeah, I didn't see anything in the Shinaran thing.
I didn't either.
The Shinarans fighting each other? Is that even real?
They're arguing, I think. I think there was some... Because, they're starting that prophecy to go... The reason they're moving south is because of that prophecy that they have to, slap Rand.
The Saldeans. They're talking about Bashir's army?
Yeah. Oh, well, I think the reason Bashir's army's heading south is because they're coming after Mazrim Taim.
Oh, I see.
There's just a lot of complicated stuff going on here with these conversations, because they're getting a lot of stuff wrong, but they're getting some of the events right.
The Shinarans are possibly fighting amongst each other, trying to figure out what their next move is, it looks like, and possibly following through with the prophecy, where the I should say, rather than Shinaran, the Borderlander leaders have to get together and go test the Dragon Reborn.
And that was sparked by Huron's return to the Borderlands, bringing the news of Rand al'Thor as the dragon.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And we also see Bashir moving a Saldean army to the south and east, which we think is also correct, looking for Tame.
Yeah, because he's escaped. He's been rescued by Demandred. Or, if you believe in the theory that, at this point, Robert Jordan made Demandred Taim, and hadn't separated those two characters yet, he was actually, this is where Demandred basically got Taim out of prison and then took his place. But that theory has obviously been disproven many times.
Yeah.
So, but
glad you said it
this
for me.
Is right. I can see it in your face. You were like,
no.
No, clearly, no. Demandred did rescue Taim, and he is currently, basically, having rescued him, is training him up to return to Rand and converting him to the dark side, in my opinion.
I'm right there with you. We see that the sisters are worried about the perception of the tower, what with it being broken and losing Tame in, the same week.
Well, yeah. It's being corrupted from the inside by the Black and now by Fain. A couple of things. Teslin, we know, ends up helping out Matt for a while. I think Teslin and Jolene are both become hanging out with Matt. She helps him in a couple of situations with the golem and things like that. So that's way later as she goes off on her various quests.
Yeah, they're the only two that are cool in this room right now.
Yeah, totally.
Or decent human beings, I should say, not cool. And I'm just skimming through here to see if there's any other really big, important events to talk about. Because after the section that I just read in, the sisters continue discussing world events. Aradimon and Terabon are in shambles, and basically all the citizens there are refugees, is a point that they bring up.
The world's in total chaos. I mean, the plains on the west coast... Kyrian, the Civil War, with all that stuff that's directly or indirectly caused by Rand, like the Kyrian Civil War that was caused by Tom killing some king.
Yeah.
And that's
Rand had a hand in that, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Just
so technically, all of his Tavernus is tearing these countries apart because they need to be torn apart so he can put them back together again. Or the Shan Chan can. Who can? Shan Chan can.
The Shan Chan can. I like it. The Panarch Amathera has apparently vanished.
Which we saw in the last book when Elaine and Nynaeve kidnapped her out of the palace.
Right. They're with Nynaeve and Elaine right now.
Yep.
By they, I mean Amathera.
Well, the royal they.
I also wanted to point out that in Elaida's internal monologue, I just highlighted less than 2 months since they had all knelt to swear fealty to her as the embodiment of the White Tower. So a little bit of time has passed from now since the last book, if I remember correctly. Not much, but a little bit of time has passed.
Well, and Amathera must come back as the Panarch, because she gets taken by the Shan Chan, so she's disappeared, but after spending some time, she must reappear.
After that, the conversation turns to the royal children of Andor, and Daya asks, is there any news of Elaine or Galad? Then I highlighted kind of at the end, if she, meaning Morghese, learns we have lost the daughter heir, Andor may become as close to us as Amadisha. Although, of course, Morghese isn't making the decisions anymore. No,
she is under compulsion by her new lover, Ravine. Lord Gabriel. Did I say Ravine there? Don't know why I said that, yeah. So, yeah, we know that she's basically being controlled. This is a relatively new thing, but from now on, Morghese no longer exists. She's totally under the control of Lord Gabriel.
Yeah, and in the prologue here is actually where we see the reveal. After the Elaida section is a Ravine section. And I feel like that's when we find out that Ravine is definitely Lord Gabriel.
I'm not sure it's obvious at that point. No, certainly in hindsight we can be like, oh yeah, of course, that's obvious. But, that's one of those things where, first time through, I wasn't sure that Lord Gabriel was Morghese at this point.
Well, maybe it isn't too obvious, but we see him there in Andor, and the other Forsaken visit him. Yeah. Or we see him talking to Andor and Lords.
And he does mention that there's someone under his control that's fighting it, the Gabriel. Well, okay, it may have been obvious to you, Aradia, but not to me, okay?
Gabriel, yeah. We also see the sisters talking about, they believe that Morghese is absorbing her efforts in trying to take the Kyrianan throne now that Kyrianan is in a terrible civil war and can't defend itself. And we find later that this is actually Ravine's plan to use Morghese. He needs her claim to the Lion Throne and the Sun Throne, and he plans on integrating those kingdoms, or queendoms, whatever you call it, and then killing Morghese, essentially.
Yeah, once he's got enough power that she doesn't need her anymore, he's just going to get rid of her.
But he needs her to consolidate the two powers so that the people will accept Morghese and Gabriel as their leader.
And he's trying to play the game of houses a little bit, but, the Forsaken cheat at the game of houses. They just make people think what they want them to think. They don't have to, actually manipulate you. They can just compel you.
True. It's kind of cheating.
It's like, Tom goes a long way to make people think that this other person is their enemy, so they kill him. The Forsaken just go,
just kill him.
Compulsion. Yep, just go kill that person. Oh, okay. And since no one really can detect it anymore, it's just this really safe way for them to be in control. You don't even need them to kill. You just be like, oh yeah, I want the queen to do whatever I want and love me, as well as all her friends. Now we talk about, I've heard people mention the Rand harem, and I think that's just bullshit, because it's not a harem. He's not in control. He rarely ever gets to sleep with any of them. It's an open relationship. Lord Gabriel, on the other hand, has a fucking harem. He's got Queen Morghese. He's got 7 or 8 other women on his beck and call, some of which are compelled, some of which are not. Some people just like the power, I think. I don't know if all the women are compelled. I can't remember.
I think that's a power thing.
Yeah. But yeah, Lord Gabriel is out there and being tall, dark, and handsome with compulsion. So he is the one who is playing the field. Ravine!
And we see Lanfear and Graendal make fun of Ravine for his tastes.
Which, okay, Graendal.
Well, at least she fully embraces it. She's just like, no, this is who I am. I feel like Ravine is trying to play high and mighty, and they're like, you're not so high and mighty, my man. You are just like the rest of us.
You're not successfully playing the field. You're raping women. Congratulations, buddy.
We see conversation turn toward, because the women are discussing Morghese and, where the hell is Elaine? Where is Galad? Nobody knows. And Jolene says, well, at least we have her son in hand, meaning Morghese's son, Gawain. And Teslin disagrees. He's not so much in hand. Gawain do hardly be in hand, Teslin said sharply. Those younglings of his do skirmish with white cloaks on both sides of the river. He does act on his own as much as at our direction. Alviarin seems to think that he'll be brought under control, but he never really is brought under control by anyone.
I mean, they put him in a situation where he will most likely die. That's kind of how they try and bring him under control, is like putting him in a situation where he could die.
Yeah.
They basically try and kill him.
And I never really thought about this before, but Gawain is a bit of an agent of chaos in a general sense.
He doesn't do what anyone wants him to do. He's a dick to everybody.
His allegiances are questionable at best. He doesn't really follow orders from anyone. Yeah, he's a bit of an agent of chaos. Maybe I could say a little self-absorbed.
Just a tiny bit. Maybe.
That was sarcasm for anyone who doesn't realize. The hateable Gawain. I'm going to order a bunch of stuff for my office tomorrow. Spend some money to vamp it up. Showing people yesterday, but I'll try to move the camera around slowly. I just have, old sleeping bags and stuff all pinned to the walls. None of the art's up or anything. It's all...
I think part of the reason you're blowing out is it's still a bit of an echoey room, and so when you get loud, the echo comes back and amplifies quite a bit.
Yeah, I really just have random stuff on the walls, and a lot of it is the styrofoam and cardboard that I use to package things while moving. I just nail to the walls, essentially. Start recording, but hopefully I'll have a bit more elaborate setup soon. Anyway, I just fell down a hole there.
A video hole.
Yeah. Talking about Gawain fighting with the White Cloaks. Sorry, what
the next little bit I had was Elaida basically speaking up for the first time when everyone gets up to leave, and she's like, all right, I need to take some power back here. I've been totally undercut. It's time to start coming down hard on people who are even my allies.
Have I given you leave to go, daughters? When they all kind of decide that they've discussed everything. Although Elaida sat there kind of passive-aggressively and didn't say anything the entire time. And, of course, she takes that moment to berate people for not getting done what she thinks should be getting done.
Yeah, and the whole point, the conversation that they're avoiding is talking about Rand al'Thor, is talking about the Dragon Reborn. They're trying to do everything around that without actually bringing up that single...
Without actually discussing it.
Right. And she's like, this is ridiculous. You need to face your fears here. Stand up, talk about the Dragon Reborn. We've done everything else. It's like when you got that one big homework assignment and your house is really, really clean. Because you find everything else to do than deal with that one big assignment that you don't want to deal with.
That's a good way to put it. Elaida kind of goes around. She brings up Swan first and says there was no mention of the search for Swan and her companions. Of course, she says that woman and her companions. Yeah. Alviarin points out that it's pretty difficult to conduct a thorough search for someone when we've liberally spread the rumor that she's dead. It's hard to go around asking questions about her.
Have you seen Suan, the dead woman? No. Why would I
thought you put her in the ground?
Yeah. She's a ghost? I haven't seen a ghost, no.
She charges Jolene with the search and says that, basically... She hasn't been found yet, so decide what your penance is going to be and send me a note, and if I don't think that's good enough, I'll triple it. And she's just berating everyone. I'm skipping over a lot of it, but doing a lot of things like this.
Just coming down on one by one, just trying to give them little punishments for her allies, and then people are like, oh, she's willing to come down on her allies. What'll she do to me? I better start listening. And her allies, of course, won't protest. They won't be like, that's unfair, because they want to support her, and they know that by undercutting her authority, they're undercutting her authority. And so by punishing her allies, she's actually sort of establishing
Dominant?
Establishing fear, basically.
Yeah.
And establishing rule through fear. Using, as you know, if you want to say Fain's been there for a few days, maybe she's using the tactics of the dark side to fight the dark side.
They do seem to be acquainted with each other when they talk in a minute here.
Mm-hmm. No, and I've had bosses like that who just they're just mean to everybody because being nice for them is a sign of weakness, and they think being powerful and being strong is being mean.
Yeah, that actually just makes you look like an idiot.
Yeah.
Elaida is also concerned with reuniting the tower at this point, like we were talking about before. But I think as the meetings with Fain get more frequent, she becomes disinterested in actually reintegrating the blue and a lot of the green.
Yeah, also as the Saladar becomes more firmly established as an alternate tower. But I do think that if without the influence of Fain, she never would have tried to banish the Blue Ajah. And without the banishment of the Blue Ajah, I don't think Saladar ever would have become a rebel tower. I think that people would have started coming back.
I think that has to be right. But if you had given them the option to come back, they probably would have. But if you permanently banish, that many sisters, well, now you have this large group of channelers that can't go to the tower, so they're going to establish some kind of resistance, probably.
Right.
Or at least an organization that undercuts the tower.
And certainly there's a whole slew of decisions that's put out by essentially Alviarin and the Black Ajah, as well as just an insane Elaida, that are designed to keep the tower split. And we can get later into exactly which ones were put out for what reasons. But one of the things that I find interesting is the struggle she shares with Egwene in terms of, she's put on the throne by these women, but then she has to take power back from them, and the different approaches they have to taking that power is kind of entertaining.
I think Egwene is... I don't even know how to classify this. I'm actually going to roll that back. I'm not going to try to classify that. They're just completely different people. Egwene seems to have a good idea about how to lead powerful folks. And
how to play them off with each other, whereas Elaida just overrides them like a bull.
Right, and, you do that to powerful, competent people, and you're going to start to lose allies really quickly. They understand what's going on. They're not stupid.
There's a reason why Elaida ends up sitting up alone in her white tower with no one around her. I think the disappearing chairs sort of indicate her loneliness and her isolation as well. You see all these chairs that these people sat in. When Gwaine is visiting the study a lot, the chairs disappear one by one over time until there's no chairs left.
I never really caught that, but yeah, at some point there's nothing left.
Mm-hmm. She makes everybody stand to talk to her.
Right. The only other thing, before I have a little bit to read from Elaida's longish monologue, is that the sisters observe, I believe this is Elaida talking, she brings up the Terran soldiers moving into Cairhien, as well as Andoran soldiers moving into Cairhien, from opposite directions, obviously. And they seem worried that Tyr and Andor will go to war against each other.
Which could make sense if you have two Forsaken helming each of those two places. Although I would think they would almost try and go after somebody else.
Yeah, and I think Elaida isn't able to understand this because she can't understand that the Andoran... Well, the Terran troops are there on a mission of mercy. I think the Andoran ones are as well at this point. Ravine eventually pulls them back.
Right.
To stop delivering food.
But that was something Morghese had set up.
Yeah.
She was helping across the border.
While she still had her faculties.
Right, but then once Ravine took over, he's like, no, we're not helping those people anymore. You kidding me?
And at that point, Elaida starts berating the group as a whole and points at a giant portrait of Rand fighting Ishmael that she has had put up on her wall, telling them to look at it because she wants to get to the topic at hand here.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the Dragon Reborn. Let's talk about DR.
Slowly, they raised their eyes, shuffling feet like nervous girls instead of Aes Sedai. Only Alviarin merely looked, and only she appeared untouched. Shemmarin wrung her hands, and tears actually welled in her eyes. Something would have to be done about Shemmarin. Randall Thor, a man who can channel. The words left Elaida's mouth like a whip. They made her own stomach knot up till she feared she might vomit. Somehow, she kept her face smooth and pressed on, pushed the words out, stones from a sling. A man fated to go mad and wreak horror with the power before he dies, But more than that, Aradoman, Antarabon, and everything between is a ruin of rebellion because of him. If war and famine in Cairhien cannot be tied to him of a certainty, he surely precipitates a greater war there, between Tyr and Andor, when the Tower needs peace. In Gildan, some mad Shienaran preaches of him to crowds too great for Alyandra's army to contain. The greatest danger the Tower has ever faced, the greatest threat the world has ever faced, and you cannot make yourself speak of him? You cannot gaze at his image? Silence answered her. All save Alviarin looked as though their tongues were frozen. Most stared at the young man in the painting, birds hypnotized by a snake. Rand al'Thor. The name tasted bitter on Elaida's lips. Once she had had that young man, so innocent in appearance, within arm's reach, and she had not seen what he was. Her predecessor had known for the light alone knew how long, and had left him to run wild. That woman had told her a great deal before escaping, had said things when put to the hard question, that Elaida would not let herself believe. If the Forsaken were truly free, all might be lost, but somehow she had managed to refuse some answers, and then escaped before she could be put to the question. That woman and Moraine, that woman in the blue had known all along. Elaida intended to have them both back in the Tower. They would tell every last scrap of what they knew. They would plead on their knees for death before she was done. She forced herself to go on, though the words curdled in her mouth. Rand al'Thor is the Dragon Reborn, daughters. Shamiran's knees gave way, and she sat down hard on the floor. Some of the others appeared to have weak knees as well. Elaida's eyes flogged them with scorn. There can be no doubt of it. He is the one spoken of in prophecies. The Dark One is breaking free of his prison. The last battle is coming, and the Dragon Reborn must be there to face him, or the world is doomed to fire and destruction, so long as the wheel of time turns. And he runs free, daughters. We do not know where he is. We know a dozen places he is not. He is no longer in Tyr. He is not here in the Tower, safely shielded as he should be. He brings the whirlwind down on the world, and we must stop it. And we must stop it if there is to be any hope of surviving Tarman Gaidan. We must have him in hand to see he fights in the last battle. Or do any of you believe he will go willingly to his prophesied death to save the world? A man who must be going mad already? We must have him in control. Thought I'd leave it there because it also sets up Dumai's Wells right there.
Right? There's so much to unwrap there. Everything from the mention of some Shienaran preaching about this Dragon Reborn, the prophet, gets mentioned here.
Do you see the meme someone put in Discord?
I did. I was going to say, to if the Forsaken are truly free,
and Masano's standing there in the room.
Right. It's being like, yes. Yeah, I don't know if they're truly free. Like everything they're like talking about, like Morghase's new lover, some Forsaken. I don't know if they're free. Yeah. Hey, at least Elaida is smart enough to figure out that Rand is the Dragon Reborn. There's no faking that.
And embrace it and like, okay, we know this thing. Let's take that information in hand and move forward with some kind of a plan. Like actually discuss it. You know?
Right. No, I mean, there's signs of Elaida being a good leader at various points. Not for this time, right?
Yeah.
And certainly not after Fain gets his fingers on her and Alviarin, puts out terrible, terrible, terrible policies in her name. There's just a lot going on there that means she cannot be a good ruler. But in a certain time, of a certain person, she probably could have been decent.
I think so, or, maybe not of the Tower, but of, some committee or other group. She seems like a efficient boss.
But again,
least.
very quickly after this, she is, I'm assuming some of what's going on here is Fain's influence, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. But yeah, I mean, she's clearly power hungry and ruthless, and that leads her to do some bad shit, even before the influence of Fain.
Yeah. I'm actually going to read a little more because this ties it all right together. Elaida, as she is dismissing everyone. Putting our hands on Rand al'Thor is more important by far than skirmishes in Shienar, or whether the Blight is quiet. More important than finding Elaine or Galad. More important than Mazrim Taim. You will find him. You will. When I next see you, each of you will be ready to tell me in detail what you have done to make it so. Now, you may leave me, daughters. It just shows how set she is on putting Rand in that box.
She wants to control him.
I haven't read that part of the series in quite a while. Do they put Rand in a box immediately, or is it like... Because he has several escape attempts.
That's how they get him out of the throne room, is they bring in a chest of gold a couple of times to show him, and then that last time it's an empty box of gold. And so they shield him, put him in the box, and walk out with him in the box and tell the Aiel that, oh, he jumped through a gateway, and he's gone.
Gotcha.
I think they put Min, they packed him Min in a box as well to get her out. But I think she was only in there for a little while.
She's not as dangerous. I mean, even Rand in a box and manages to kill quite a few Aes Sedai and warders. At some point, they let him out at the end of the day. At the end of a day.
Yeah, I mean, I think they get him out. Basically, they put him in the box. Well, remember, there's that whole scene with the one Aes Sedai who's like, I have all of my specimen boxes, and I plan on keeping a specimen. And it's Rand. They're going to stick in there.
Yeah.
They're telling me Min wasn't boxed, so I'm not sure how they got her out of the palace. Probably just wrapped her up in flows of the one power and walked her out.
She just has to be tied up. But even if you shield Rand, he still manages to like kill 3 warders and an Aes Sedai or something like that. Shielded. And
after that, they start boxing him all day. Before that, I think they just occasionally stuck him in there, just when he was being bad. But once he killed a bunch of warders by hand, they were like, in the box for the. And then that one Aes Sedai who had her warders killed is the one who wanted to beat him all the time.
Oh, right. I can't wait to get to the box.
Yeah. Oh, so all right. I'm going to take this opportunity to go off on my. I think I was telling you about this earlier, that Dumai's Wells is essentially The Empire Strikes Back, because that whole scene from start to finish is orchestrated by the Dark, right? Everything from his kidnapping to his torture to his rescue was all done by agents of the Dark. It was essentially the Dark One's plan to set him up as a villain and release him on the world. And hopefully then, on Dragonmount, destroy the wheel. So I do think that sort of is the middle of the series, both conceptually and like in terms of the descent into the blackness, and that's really like...
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And that is the box sequence in Lord of Chaos?
Yeah.
Because that ties in like perfectly, where it really seems like either the Dark Lord or the Forsaken, whatever, are really conspiring to just drive Rand crazy.
Right. I think that's the goal, and that Dumai's Wells is certainly the closest they get to ever accomplishing driving Rand insane.
Yeah.
And that's why at the end of that book you see, I believe it's Samael standing at Shale Ghul being like, did I do well? And the Dark One's like, or it's Demandred maybe. I think it's Demandred. Yeah, it is Demandred. Standing in Shale Ghul, and the Dark One's like, let the Lord of Chaos rule, because they successfully, that was a successful thing. And it caused Rand to kill a bunch of, still a bunch of women, and Taim got the Ashaman to do a lot of killing of Shido, and I mean, just the whole thing.
The Lord of Chaos does rule for quite a while.
Yeah, he does. So I think that the torture to set Rand up to destroy the world was highly successful. So it's a dark, dark turn. I know it's seen as a victory because Rand gets rescued, but after that, he's truly... and that's when he truly becomes insane. That's when LTT, he starts talking to the guy in his head. And
out loud.
Out loud, yeah.
While people are in the room. Yeah. It's pretty undeniable after that. He's really unstable.
Right.
The box works, just to a degree at least.
So that's a long diversion from where we are now. But a lot of it's set up here, right? The kidnapping and everything is being set up here, and what you've got, from the who's starting it, who's in the room, Danelle, Alviarin, like all of those people are here, saying, "Yeah, let's kidnap him. That's a good idea." Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All supporting her, and yeah, that's why I wanted to read Elaida's monologue, because it really sets up how hellbent she is on. She's like, all of this stuff is not important at all in comparison to the Dragon Reborn being loose in the world. Like, you must do something about that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, I will literally beat the shit out of you. Everybody, all the Aes Sedai leave except for Alviarin, and she and Elaida are alone in the room for a moment, and they just kind of stare at each other, which is a weird, unsettling scene.
I was reading this name here, Shiram, this yellow sister, Shimmerin. I thought that was Shamirin, the blue, because they describe her as slightly plump, so the description's similar.
Oh gosh, well.
So I was thinking she was the dark friend blue Shamirin the whole time. I'm totally off about that. I'm sorry, guys. That's a big mistake on my part. This is the yellow that gets demoted and basically appears in.
Okay. Oh, that's right. Shiriam isn't here. She goes to Celadar.
Yeah. But this is the one that ends
Shamarin.
up in. She ends up in the rebel camp when they get to the White Tower, and Galad is riding in, and he actually spots her in the camp. And once he spots her, he tells Gareth Bryn about it, and Gareth Bryn goes and gets her, and she tells him about how to get into the White Tower, and that's the entrance that Suan and Bryn go in when they go and rescue Egwene during the attack of the Shan-Chan.
Oh, nice. Yes, all the Aes Sedai leave in a unsettling scene. Alviarin and Elaida just kind of scowl at each other for a minute, and Accepted knocks on the door, bringing Fain. Padan Fain put the frantic young Accepted out of his mind as he stepped into the Amyrlin study. She was a toothsome bit, and he liked them fluttering like birds in the hand, but there were more important matters to concentrate on now. Dry-washing his hands, he ducked his head suitably low, suitably humbly, but the two awaiting him seemed unaware of his presence at first. Locked eye to eye as they were, it was all he could do not to stretch out a hand to caress the tension between them. Tension and division wove everywhere through the White Tower, all to the good. Tension could be tweaked, division exploited, as need be. He had been surprised to find Elaida on the Amyrlin seat, better than what he had expected, though. In many ways she was not so tough, he had heard, as the woman who had worn the stole before her. Harder, yes, and more cruel, but more brittle, too. More difficult to bend, likely, but easier to break, if either became necessary. Still, one Aes Sedai, one Amyrlin even, was much like another to him. Fools, dangerous fools, true, but useful dupes at times. Finally, they realized he was there, the Amyrlin frowning slightly at being taken by surprise, the Keeper of Chronicles unchanging. "You may go now, daughter," Elaida said firmly, a slight but definite emphasis on now. Oh yes, the tensions, the cracks in power, cracks where seeds could be planted. Fain caught himself on point of giggling. Alviarin hesitated before giving the briefest of curtsies. As she swept out of the room, her eyes brushed across him, expressionless, yet disconcerting. Unconsciously he huddled, hunching his shoulders protectively. His upper lip fluttered in a half-snarl at her slim back. On occasion, he had the feeling, just for an instant, that she knew too much about him, but he could not have said why. Her cool face, cool eyes, they never changed. At those times he wanted to make them change. Fear, agony, pleading. He nearly laughed at the thought. No point, of course. She could know nothing. Patience. And he could be done with her and the never-changing eyes. I liked that because there's a good chance that Alviarin does sense something in Fain.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, with her being attuned to the Dark One, there is some sense there. I think with the One Power and him being part of the Shadow Logith, I'm willing to bet that he gives off some aura for the people who are tuned to it. In the same way that, like, remember how the really super dark friends could feel Matt and the dagger?
Yes.
Well, Alviarin is a super dark friend, and Fain is super Shadow Logith, so I'm willing to bet the same thing that allowed those dark friends to feel Matt is what is allowing Alviarin to feel something in Padan Fain.
Kind of shadow resonance.
Exactly. I also thought it was interesting that the reason he cannot get something else from Shadow Logith is he's afraid of being trapped there again. That would be an interesting plot line to, like, try and get Fain back into Shadow Logith and see if he could, like, be re-trapped by Mashadar, or what would have happened there.
Yeah, I didn't really understand. I mean, we know that Mashadar was trapped there, and Fain is Mashadar now, kind of.
Well, in particular, Mordeth was trapped there. He was the personality that has been trapped there all that time.
Right,
and he's
right.
now in Fain. So when he's saying, I don't want to get trapped there, that's not Fain, that's Mordeth.
Yeah.
Who is Fain? You know, I mean, they've merged into this weird something else thing.
Right. I never really thought of Shadar Logoth as a prison, but we know it effectively is one for a long time, and Mordeth needs a human body to bring him out. Otherwise, it was bound to what was once Eredal.
No, and even at the end, at his death, he's still bound to the body. He needs to be bound to something physical, whether it's a place or a body. He's looking for, I think they're looking for a place like the Fields of Marilor, or I think he wants to head to Shale Ghul, really, and sink deep into there and find that space between worlds and really corrupt things. But he needs a place. He needs a body, whether that's a physical body of a person or the physical body of a city.
Right. And we see Fain thinking before the conversation really starts, basically in Fain's mind why he's there. For instance, the Horn of Valir is there, the dagger is there, and it's also the seat of power. A seat of power, which Mordeth is always attracted to.
I like the idea that he got from the Two Rivers to Tar Valon by going through the ways, and that's how he got there so quickly after the battle. Because we just saw at the end of the last book, he was, leaving the Two Rivers.
Yeah, and we do know it's been approximately 2 weeks.
And we know he's adept at using the ways, although they were locked.
Does Fain leave the Two Rivers before or after Loyal locks the gate?
Long after.
So he would have had to come from another... I mean, he could have used another gate.
That's true. Yeah, there are other ones out there. There's a bunch in the Mountains of Mist.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the closest one is, but he could have just used another gate.
It was locked from the inside initially, and then more Trollocs were coming, and so they went back and locked it for good. So it was locked from both sides.
Right, and Loyal and Gaul arrive back into Emond's Field just as, from locking the gate, they arrive back just as the big battles are about to begin.
Right, but Fain witnesses the final battle. We see him leaving the Two Rivers.
He'd have had to ride out, unless there's a gate in the mountains somewhere, which is more possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think Loyal points out 4 steadings in the Mountains of Mist, so there certainly are more way gates around that he could have used.
Yeah.
So he would have had to get to one, but...
Yeah, because in 2 weeks there's no way, even if he rode on a Trollocs back and made them run the entire way, I still think it would take more than 2 weeks to move over land from Emond's Field to the tower.
The White, absolutely. Because we know that even when when he's chasing after Rand and Matt, I think it takes him a week to get to Baerlon.
Yeah, and they're running.
And Fain is barely keeping up. So, I mean, there's no way he got to the White Tower in a week. It must have been the ways. Or, maybe he has other powers.
It's true, he's not really a person anymore. So, there's a lot to consider here. And I think that... I mean, Fain is definitely adept at using the ways, and there's no harm that can come to him there. First of all, Mashin Shin is like his dog now.
Right.
and even all the Trollocs streaming through won't be any threat to Fain at this point.
No, he just converts them. He just takes their souls. Although I guess it takes a while at this point to convert folk. He can't do it instantly. I think maybe it takes touch. I'm not really sure. Certainly later he's able to do it just, at a distance.
Yeah. I just had a momentary flash when Matt stabbed someone with the dagger at Falma.
Yeah.
There's this silent room and a man screaming and slowly turning to ash. As the Shanchan and the Ranlanders face each other, everyone just stops. Then they watch this guy die in the middle of the floor. What a scene.
I also think of that at Farmatting when he kills the Ashaman with the dagger, and we see it from his point of view. He takes 2 steps and then falls. He looks down at his hand and it's all turning black.
I can't wait to see stuff like that in the show.
Oh god. Oh man, so I was listening back to a scene where the Shido are given the portals by Samuel and Grendel, and they jump through the portals and he distributes them all over the place. And there's a scene where they're jumping through and it closes early and cuts a bunch of Brotherless in half. And the Aiel casually mentions the top half of a body sliding to his feet. And I was like, that sort of went right by me, but visually, that's fucking brutal.
Yeah, there's some really stunning scenes that we've already gone through, and it only gets worse, really, as the series goes on. Or better, depending on how you look at it. A fine horror film.
Right.
Elaida says, "Tell me more of what you know of Rand al'Thor, Master Fain." And by the way, this is what I was talking about before when Seth mentioned how much contact Elaida has had with Fain. This line, when she says, "Tell me more of what you know of Rand al'Thor, Master Fain," they've had this conversation before. This isn't their first meeting.
No, definitely
I just
not.
wanted to point that out.
And that's why I think some of her actions here in taking back power are Fain corruption influence.
Totally.
This punishment of her fellows and this distrust of her own Aja is, I think, totally Fain driven. It's planting seeds.
Fain's eyes went to the painting of the two men, and as he gazed at it, his back straightened. al'Thor's portrait tugged at him almost as much as the man would, sent rage and hate roiling along his veins. Because of that young man, he had suffered pain beyond remembering, pain he did not let himself remember, suffered far worse than pain. He had been broken and remade because of al'Thor. Of course, that remaking gave him the means of revenge, but that was beside the point. Beside his desire for al'Thor's destruction, everything else dimmed from sight. When he turned back to the Amyrlin, he did not realize that his manner was as commanding as hers, meeting her stare for stare. Rand al'Thor is devious and sly, uncaring of anyone or anything but his own power. Fool woman, he thinks. He's never a one to do what you expect, but she could put al'Thor in his hands, he thinks. He is difficult to lead, very difficult, but I believe it can be done. First, you must tie a string to one of the few he trusts. If she gave him al'Thor, he might leave her alive when he finally went, even if she was
Thank
Aes
you for
Sedai.
listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?